Hello, my name is Paul Bramall. We are now going to cover information you must share with your customer at the point of handing over the equipment or the checkout point. While these may seem like very simple instructions, it is very important that your customer understands them. If you fail to educate your customer about these, it can lead to lost productivity, a negative first impression, and ultimately a dissatisfied customer, which could cost your company money. Today we are focusing on the equipment which is powered by single-cylinder horizontal shaft petrol engines between 3.5 and 14 horsepower. Please note, these general checks can be applied to any petrol engine in your fleet. The only exceptions you may see are for equipment where the controls may be operated remotely or the air cleaner or fuel tank have been repositioned by the OEM. At the point of checkout, equipment has been PDI'd and is therefore ready to work. So the initial focus is on making sure the customer knows how to start the engine and use the equipment when it arrives on site. First and foremost, you must walk the customer around the equipment and educate them on the safety and general usage aspects of the machine. Be sure to follow the OEM's operating instructions at all times. When it comes to the engine, the first thing you must ensure is that the customer is familiar with the basic operations to ensure they can get the engine started when it arrives on site. As per the equipment, be sure to familiarize yourself with the engine manufacturer's operation guidelines. For equipment in your fleet, which is powered by a standard engine, be sure to explain the 5-step starting process. First, switch on the ignition. Then set the throttle. Close the choke, and finally open the fuel valve before pulling the recoil to start. Once the engine is running, the operator can open the choke. Now here is a very important point to note. It is very common that operators forget to open the fuel valve before starting the engine. This means the engine will start but will cut out after a few seconds because it runs out of fuel. The operator will continue to pull the recoil. The engine won't start as the fuel valve is closed, and eventually will call the depot to complain that the engine won't start. For rental equipment which has been upgraded to Vanguard, there is a simplified 3-step starting process. Firstly, move the 3-in-1 transport guard lever which operates the ignition, throttle and fuel supply. Secondly, close the choke to start the engine. You can then pull the recoil and start it. Once the engine is running, the operator can open the choke. Note, with Transport Guard, the fuel supply is automatically open with the engine ignition, so the common starting problem I mentioned earlier is completely eliminated, together with the unnecessary calls to the depot to troubleshoot why the engine won't start. Once the engine is running, the customer can perform the job at hand. When the job is complete, they stop the engine. For standard engines, return the engine throttle to idle and then switch off the ignition switch. Be sure, as a best practice, always to close the fuel valve. This is very important as equipment may be transported between job sites or returned to the rental store. Making sure the fuel supply is shut off ensures there is no fuel and oil dilution during transportation. This may sound obvious, but based on a recent study we conducted with 80 rental companies, 3/4 of rental personnel claimed the vast majority of customers returned the equipment with the fuel valve left open. As a result, 69% of respondents claimed unnecessary oil changes resulting from this increased their company's environmental impact. 59% claimed it increased the rental company's total cost of ownership, while 58% claimed it reduced their productivity. For rental companies who have upgraded to Vanguard, the 3-in-1 Transport Guard lever shuts off the ignition and fuel supply simultaneously, thereby eliminating the problem entirely. No unnecessary oil changes are required with Vanguard, resulting in a lower fleet TCO and reduced environmental impact. In the case of a short-term rental up to 1 week, the equipment will leave the depot after a pre-delivery inspection. Therefore, the equipment is in perfect working order both from a safety and an operational perspective. It is unlikely that a small piece of equipment out on rent for less than a week will do more than 25 hours of operation, with the exception of a generator where it may be providing power for extended periods of time. Therefore, to avoid any potential issues, the operator should only be required to refill the fuel tank as needed. The aim should be to not open the engine any more than is really required. The more they open up the engine, whether it be the oil fill or the air cleaner, the more risk there is of debris entering the engine. One exception to the rule is when the equipment is working in extremely dusty environments. Take a concrete saw, for example, where there is a lot of airborne debris entering the air filter. In such cases, the operator must check the air filter on a daily basis prior to operation. For standard engines, be careful when removing the cartridge, as debris can drop down into the air intake manifold. If the filter is dirty, tap it on a hard surface and reinstall it. Likewise, for those machines upgraded to Vanguard, simply remove the cyclonic air filter, tap it on a hard surface and reinstall it. Remember, never use an airline on an air filter element, as this can damage the filter. The operator should check the equipment every day prior to using it to ensure the engine and equipment are free of debris which may impede standard operation. They should check for any damage caused to the rewind, muffler and fuel tank. The fuel level should be checked and topped up with fresh, clean fuel if required. Ensure the fuel cap, dipstick and air filter cover are properly installed. After doing this, they should follow the same process to start the engine as outlined earlier in this video. For long-term rentals, if you require your customer to carry out routine maintenance in addition to the daily checks, it is recommended that every Monday morning prior to work, the operator check the oil level and top it up if required. Ensure they use the right grade of oil and that it is fresh, clean oil. For equipment powered by standard engines, check and top up the oil via the 2 low-mount dipsticks. The oil should be changed every 100 hours of operation. For equipment upgraded to Vanguard, the oil level can be checked by either the automotive-style dipstick or the 2 low-mount ports. If the oil needs topping up, do so via the high oil fill on the rocker cover or via the 2 lower ports. Vanguard offers extended oil service intervals and therefore should be changed every 200 hours of operation. They should check the air filter element too in order to ensure it is clean. The cleaning procedure is exactly the same as presented earlier. As a reminder for those with standard engines in your fleet, do not forget to inform your customers to shut off the fuel valve prior to transporting the equipment. Failure to do so can lead to increased costs and environmental impact of your fleet. When the customer returns the equipment to the rental depot, ask if everything worked well and that the equipment performed to expectations. If there are any complaints, take note of these. Have your technician check them before the equipment is rented out again. Take a quick look around the equipment to ensure there is no damage or missing parts. Check the engine as well for any signs of damage, specifically the recoil starter, controls, muffler and fuel tank. Make sure the fuel cap and dipsticks have not been removed. Remember, for standard engines in your fleet, check the fuel valve has been closed. If it is open, make sure your technician checks the oil, as there is a risk of fuel and oil contamination. Extended operation in this condition could lead to premature wear and increased emissions.